What is the new normal, and how do we, states and societies, prepare for the many challenges that are brought on by this new security environment? That is the main question that this monograph, which is entitled Non-Traditional Security Concerns in the New Normal, published by RSIS, seeks to address. This is the new normal in the advent of COVID-19 pandemic. Now, we focus particularly on issues which we consider non-traditional security, focusing on challenges and threats which are non-military in nature and yet threaten the survival and the well-being of states and societies. This includes, for example, pandemics, environmental degradation, and the like. So in this monograph is based on a webinar series by researchers at the Center for Non-Traditional Security Studies, which looked at certain issues and unpacked the nature of the challenges that are brought on by COVID-19 on the well-being and security of states in the region. So let me now turn to Louis to tell you more about the contents of the monograph.
Thank you, Prof. Nali. To set the tone for the monograph, Ambassador Ong Keng Yong said in his foreword, pragmatic and foresighted policymaking requires acknowledging the constancy of change and the fleetingness and perhaps inadequacy of having any fixed notion of normalcy. Indeed, COVID-19 has presented a litmus test to the stability and readiness of the global healthcare system in addressing future novel threats. Yet COVID-19's impacts are not limited to health. And this is what this monograph sets forth to discuss. What are the other non-traditional security impacts of COVID-19? The first section looks at sustainable security, which includes climate security, food security, and nuclear technologies. Under climate security, Margaret Sembiring argues that the world is now facing a triple planetary crisis of climate change, environmental degradation, in the form of biodiversity loss, and as well as pollution. This is important because in the food security section, I argue that the food sector is itself facing a number of age-old challenges such that COVID-19 does not present a new normal for food, but an intensification of these age-old challenges, calling for transformative efforts in the long term. Under nuclear technologies, my colleague Julius discusses the role of nuclear technologies beyond just nuclear power provision, but rather also how nuclear technologies can be used for tracking marine pollution, food safety threats, as well as COVID-19 infections. The second section looks at humanitarian assistance and disaster relief in the broader setting. Lina Gong argues that Southeast Asia is facing simultaneous disasters from COVID-19 as well as natural disasters. This makes for a very complex situation that requires equal preparation for both kinds. Nantini also looks at the gendered aspect of disasters, whereby they don't land in socioeconomic or political voids, but rather in places where women may already be facing challenges to their power and autonomy. Finally, Christopher Chen argues that from the perspective of how society should address these challenges, it is socially and ethically irresponsible to neglect the differences in localities and individual traits when providing humanitarian aid, such as cash-based transfers and digital transfers. This monograph concludes with the multifaceted aspects of COVID-19's impacts on the new normal, looking at comparisons across these different non-traditional security issues. And I hand you back to Prof. Nali to conclude.
So, while the prospects seem bleak, we argue that it's not necessarily so if there is really a conscious attempt at relooking at approaches and even considering transformation and improvement in the way we look at old issues. We can in fact thrive by building on the novel institutional and technological innovations that are available today and tweaking existing systems to create space for such innovation, and at the same time, paying particular attention to the differentiated needs of individuals in different contexts. We hope, therefore, that you enjoy reading the monograph, and we welcome your feedback on the insights that we've shared on how societies can ponder the improbable in preparing for future novel threats.